My name is Bob, and I'm a Unitarian. Oh, come on, you know what to do. My name is Bob, and I'm a Unitarian. Welcome to Eliot Unitarian Chapel on this magnificent early summer Sunday. How nice it is to be here with the anticipation of a little rain and in celebration of the Cardinals winning a game. Whether you're here with us in the building or joining us online, you are most welcome here. Eliot Chapel is an intentionally diverse community that strives to achieve Dr. Martin Luther King's dream of beloved community. We welcome you in the fullness of your age, your ethnicity, your economic circumstances, your gender expression, your sexual orientation, wherever you find yourself on your faith journey. You are welcome among us. You bring strength to us. We hope that there is strength here that you will take away. We hope that you will hear something this morning that will bring you back, that will create a situation in your life in which your own spiritual life is stronger. Going through this in my head. Okay, if you are new or newish this morning, we extend you a special welcome. We invite you to join us after the service for the Unitarian sacrament of coffee and conversation. Come forward in the church exit to your right. Join us in Adams Hall, our social gathering spot. If you are new or if you just want somebody to talk to, select a blue cup and we will make a special effort to include you in the conversation. And for those of you who aren't new, if you see somebody with a blue cup, talk to them. It's really nice. Excuse me. Half a second. Come on. You ever notice how these things are always upside down? No matter what you want to do. Oh, come on. There we go. Our chalice lighting this morning is by Reverend Peter Friedrichs. For sleepless nights awaiting the curfew breakers, for anxious hours as a driving instructor, for hours spent on sidelines cheering and watching school plays, sometimes resting our eyes, for the pressures of breadwinning and wait till your father gets home, for teaching moments and mentoring moments, for making up answers when you just don't know, but are expected to because you know everything, for scrapes and boo-boo kisses and Band-Aids and hugs and kisses and silliness and play, for bedtime stories and early morning ice time, for all the aftershave and ties received as gifts, for handing over car keys and waves goodbye, for father-daughter wedding dances and cradling grandchildren for the first time, for all the moments and all the meanings in the role of a lifetime, we light our chalice for fathers and for fatherhood. Please stand as you are able and join us in the singing of our opening hymn, number 395.
So we're going to sing this as a round in two parts. So basically split down the middle of the center section, and we will sing the song together twice, and then Lynn will start with this side, and I'll lead you on this side, and we will sing it through 3 times as a round. So twice together, 3 times as a round.
Rejoice.
I invite you to join me in reading our congregational covenant, which you'll find in your order of service. As a free congregation, we promise to one another our mutual trust and support, to create beloved community. We promise to be kinder to each other than we have to be, to listen fully to each other with an open mind and heart, to speak responsibly and respectfully, to find ways to improve our church for all members and friends.
So today's story, I ordered it from the library. It didn't arrive at my branch. Thank goodness for YouTube storytelling, because I have the story, and Bob is going to describe the pictures which are central to the story. Right, come on up, Bob.
Okay.
The story is called My Dad Used to Be Cool by Keith Negley. This is my dad. He seems pretty normal to me.
Picture of a dad
Use the
in a
microphone.
t-shirt and jeans with tattoos on his arms.
Right, you have to use the microphone so the folks online
Oh,
can
that's
hear you,
right.
okay?
Okay, a picture of a dad in jeans and a t-shirt with tattoos on his arms.
You wouldn't believe it, but I'm sure my dad used to be in a rock band. There we go.
Okay, a picture of a dad with pink hair playing the guitar.
I know it sounds crazy, but I have the proof.
A picture of a dad riding his motorcycle real fast.
And playing a concert with everyone's arms in the air.
Whoops, we got to slide.
Okay. My dad used to be so cool. It's hard to imagine. He's always so serious. My dad having fun? I wish I could have seen it. I bet he had a blast. So what made him stop? Something must have happened for him to give it all up.
A picture of a motorcycle with a for sale sign. A picture of his dad holding a little baby. A picture of his dad playing with him at the park. Hanging on the monkey bars. Going down a massive slide. His dad lifting him high above his head. A picture of the boy on his dad's shoulders looking across a lake at the setting sun.
Okay, so maybe he's a tiny bit cool.
A picture of them driving home with his dad. The boy is in the back in his car seat. His dad holds his arm out the window, making a peace sign.
Nope, he's not. And that's the end of the story. Thank you, Bob, for your inventiveness. Thank you. Oops, got it. There. Please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation as you are willing and able. On this Father's Day, we recognize the vast spectrum of experience and the often complicated feelings that surround such a celebration. We honor those fathers and father figures in our lives who have loved, supported, encouraged, and instructed us, and we seek to share these gifts with others. We mourn with those who mourn the loss of a father, and fathers who mourn the loss of a child, whether separated by death or estrangement. We support those for whom this day brings pain and sorrow, who suffered abandonment, neglect, or abuse. We support and celebrate the fathers in our midst who give of themselves to their children, recognizing all the strength and wisdom and stamina and love and time and honest introspection that father requires. We support those men who choose not to have children yet who are present in loving and supportive ways to children, youth, and adults alike. And we seek to honor wherever we find ourselves today across this vast spectrum of experience, and to feel the compassion that embraces us within a moment of silence. Let us speak the names of those we would hold in prayer. In the spirit of love, this we pray. Amen and blessed be. Please be seated for our next hymn, number 8, Mother Spirit, Father Spirit.
In the month of June, we are sharing our offering plate with Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, an organization committed to expanding the power and capacity of Black UUs within Unitarian Universalism, providing support, information, and resources for Black Unitarian Universalists, and justice-making and liberation for Black people through our faith. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Und Freuden nicht diese Sterne. Tachte abs Elysium, wir bringen Reue himmlischen dein Heiligtum. Meinen Wagen finden wieder, was die Modus trinken. Allen Menschen, Brüder,
The ushers, please come forward. As they come forward, will you join me in our unison words of dedication, which you'll find in your order of service. To the work of the church, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings. Today's reading is by Becca Rothfield, a writer for the Washington Post. For practically as long as men have existed, they've been in crisis. Everything, it seems, threatens them with obsolescence. As far back as the 1660s, King Charles of Britain warned men that a new beverage called coffee would destroy their virility. And in the early 1900s, opponents of coeducation worried that featherbeds, dancing, and even reading might emasculate little boys. Men were in peril at the turn of the 20th century when the founder of the Boy Scouts cautioned that we badly need some training for our lads if we are to keep up manliness in our race, instead of lapsing into a nation of soft, sloppy cigarette suckers. End quote. And they had apparently not recovered by 1958 when the historian Arthur Schlesinger Jr. reported in Esquire that something has gone badly wrong with the American male's conception of himself. A dispatch from the journalist Susan Faludi confirmed that manliness remained under siege in 1999. No wonder there's such a chorus of complaints about the dearth of male role models. After so many centuries of coffee, reading, and cigarette sucking, are there even men left to emulate? Of course, there are men to look up to in practically every field of human endeavor. Eliot Kipchoge, the only person to complete a marathon in under 2 hours, is a man. Ding Liren, the world chess champion, is a man. But these figures are succeeding in their capacity as athletes and competitors, when what is needed is not someone who is good and incidentally male, but someone who is good at being male, someone whose primary occupation is masculinity itself. People don't want inspiring examples of fortitude or ingeniousness. They want what Faludi has called a gender rule book, preferably one that is easy to follow. A gender rule book is precisely what Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri attempts to provide in Manhood, the Masculine Virtues America Needs, the last in a long line of guides. Recently, there's Jack Donovan's, quote, The Way of Men, close quote, which boasts that it's for anyone who has ever wished for one day as a lion. And Jordan Peterson's best-selling 12 Rules for Life, which is nominally gender neutral, but in fact instructs readers in the art of masculinity, and which is a literal rule book. New Age types can consult Robert Bly's Iron John, the loosely Jungian urtext of the mythopoetic men's movement, published in 1990, which counsels men to embrace their Zeus energy. Pseudo-intellectuals may prefer the more refined, if less coherent, Manliness by Harvard professor Harvey Mansfield, who blusters about chivalry and gentlemen. These books have significant differences, but they all find themselves in the awkward position of claiming that masculinity is both unassailable and endangered, both natural enough to be obvious and fragile enough to require defense. Here ends the reading.
that get you excited about the sermon? So talking about uncool dads. My dad was the coolest person in my life for quite a while. He was the second strongest man I knew. The first strongest was his brother, Rick, and together they captured silver and gold in the Wheatley Hotel arm wrestling competition. I thought they were so cool. What else was cool? My dad would come in from working on the farm super grimy and sweaty, his clothes almost able to stand themselves up, because he didn't believe you needed clean clothes every day if you were going to get them dirty anyways. I thought that was so cool. But the coolest thing was our favorite game called bench press, which involved my dad laying on the floor, his arms held out, with my brother Martin on one arm, me on the other, clasping hands over his chest, and he would bench press us until we collapsed on top of him in fits of laughter. That was the coolest. But he gradually turned from the most cool dad to an decidedly uncool dad. We grew too old for bench pressing. I thought his stiff jeans were just gross. And he stopped winning arm wrestling competitions. And just like the kid in our story today, I couldn't figure out why. It couldn't have had anything to do with raising 4 kids, right? But what I reflect on now is that one of his parenting struggles was breaking the long cycle of violence that he grew up with, and that his dad grew up with, and his dad's dad grew up with, a cycle with a long history in our family. A cycle that he could feel inside himself that terrified him. And he was determined not to repeat the cycle. But there weren't many examples of men who parented any other way. So he had to figure it out pretty much all by himself. And sometimes that wasn't enough for him to be the dad he wanted to be. You see, in the Mennonite community he grew up in, fathers ruled absolutely, and violence was one of the expected tools of raising a family. Otherwise, you weren't doing your job. This understanding of fatherhood related closely to the Christian God they worshiped, a God who ruled absolutely, who loved through discipline, who should be obeyed unthinkingly, and who punished those who went against his will, all in the name of love. Because of the long history of male dominance in the human race, the images of the divine we have often held up are intimately interwoven with the expectations of men, especially men who are fathers. And these images of the divine often stand in the way of the kind of parents we need and the kind of parents we want to be. I want to talk today about how the idea of fatherhood has evolved and expanded what is possible for men, those who identify as men, and those who center masculinity in their identity. I want to talk about some of the influences that created this, and to really say thank you to those influences, because they have saved so many lives and so many spirits and ushered in so much freedom. And I also want to give some time to the backlash that we are witnessing today against this evolving fatherhood, a backlash that has happened every single time that fatherhood has become just the tiniest bit more dislodged from the belief that men are superior to everyone else. This backlash, as we know, is happening right now. And it's dangerous, even to the point of being life-threatening. And I want us to think about what is at stake for us and how we can be in solidarity with those who are being hurt the most. So going back to this idea of God, which I know is not a word that is always heard in our sanctuaries, our Unitarian Universalist sanctuaries. This idea of God, which some in our liberal religious tradition have set aside and others have held on to, often while transforming it. What I want us to consider today is that both fatherhood and the understandings of God have moved together. And I'm going to let you in on a bit of history of how this happened. So here's 300 plus years of history in about 5 minutes. So way back in the late 1700s and early 1800s, we saw something new starting in Europe and North America, the middle class. And what was considered middle class? People who weren't farmers or laborers, basically no one who worked with their hands, people who also weren't nobility or elite, but this new thing that was happening somewhere in the middle. These people might own their own business, they might be in the trades or in white-collar jobs, and the rise of the middle class is when the idea of a nuclear family began to take shape. The nuclear family being a family with a married couple at the center and a few kids. This was a very new and a very controversial idea. Because before this, most families were multi-generational, with many generations living under the same roof. The children were raised by the women, often the older women who couldn't work anymore. Everyone else worked. Parents, mothers, fathers, unmarried people, older people. If you could work, you worked. And the older women raised the children. So neither parent might actually be a primary adult in their children's early years, and especially not dads, because dads weren't expected to have any involvement raising children. But with the middle class, it became possible for a single family to support themselves, and this really changed what parenthood meant. If you were raising kids, you no longer had the support of your siblings or parents or aunts or uncles or cousins all under the same roof. It was just the two of you, which meant that fathers were more likely to have relationships with their children. And this is when the understanding of God began to shift from a more distant superpower dude who ruled on high to a God that is closer and more intimate, who knows the particulars of your life. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, God becomes a more involved father, just like what was happening in the newly emerging nuclear family. And this idea of the nuclear family, which we think of as traditional, really, it's just 300 years old. It's not even a blink of an eye compared to the 300,000 years that humans have existed. There's nothing traditional about the nuclear family. But what didn't change is that we lived in a patriarchy where men are considered superior to everyone else. God may have gotten more intimate, but he sure wasn't a soft, warm God. He was still a stern disciplinarian, only allowed the emotion of anger. And all that started to change, again, with first wave feminism, which emerged in the white middle class in Europe and North America in the 1800s. And the strategy of these first feminists was to free women by lifting up the value of motherhood. Reverend Doug talked about some of these women in our Mother's Day service just last month. And these feminists, they still couldn't conceive of a female identity separate from being a mom. So what they did was elevate motherhood and the values of motherhood, and also project those values onto God. So these first wave feminists tended to see God as more of a loving parent than a harsh, punishing parent. And when this happened, some men could imagine being different kinds of fathers. Fathers who loved their children in a more nurturing, caring way than the dad who ruled over his family with a stern watch. So the options for fatherhood evolved again. And who were the central leaders in first wave feminism in the United States? Unitarian and Universalist women. Universalism was the first Christian denomination in the United States to embody a God of complete love and forgiveness. So our faith tradition has had a really important part in expanding what is possible for men and for fathers. Did you know that? So think about this. Those of you who have wanted to embrace a different way of fathering. Or those of you who have celebrated and affirmed the men in your life, who have expanded what it means to be a good dad. The roots of this freedom started by women claiming their freedom, by women claiming their power. It broke something open for you. It broke even more when Stonewall, a gay bar, was stormed by the police in 1969 and a riot broke out led by butches and drag queens. A riot that put the gay and lesbian liberation movement into a full court press. And it's certainly a coincidence that Pride and Father's Day are in the same month, but it's no coincidence that the possibilities for fatherhood and manhood got bigger because of the LGBTQ movement. So what's it like to hear that? To hear that the expanding of the personhood of those pushed to the margins is what has offered liberation to men. There is still this understanding in our culture that men are self-made, independent, self-sufficient. Many of us know intellectually that this isn't right, but emotionally, isn't it hard to break out of that? To embrace that your freedom is a result of the less free demanding their place in the order of things. But that is exactly what happened. And I want to take it even further than that. What fathering can be, what manhood can be, has expanded even more because of drag performers, transgender people, and non-binary folks getting louder, expecting that they should have the right to authentically be who they are, come hell or high water. And in our time, nothing has expanded the possibilities of gender more, especially for manhood and fatherhood. And that is why trans folks are getting hammered with legislation that makes it more and more dangerous to be who they are. Every single time fatherhood gets bigger and freer, there is a crackdown to try and stop that change. You wouldn't believe the drama when Universalists began proclaiming God as an always loving father who would never send us to hell. What did that mean for men who identified their masculinity as the right and the responsibility to wield punishment for wrongdoing? First wave feminists faced all kinds of indignities. What would it mean for husbands if their wives had, like, the right to own property or the right to vote or rights? Better stop that. Why do gay men and transgender women face so much violence? They've pierced the bubble around traditional masculinity. And the backlash we're seeing now in the cruel legislation against transgender people is because the kind of masculinity that has hurt every single one of us is still really strong. And those who believe in it are determined to roll back the clock, no matter the price. They are abusive fathers using violence to force their will. That's what we're experiencing. Now, I've been thinking a lot about what it means to proclaim our solidarity with the trans and genderqueer communities. And I believe that there is a very important role for cisgender men in this struggle. Cisgender refers to those who are born in a body that matches their gender. The oppression that genderqueer people are facing right now, it's not just about controlling them, it's actually much more about controlling you and erasing all the ways that you have evolved from a traditional patriarchal framework of what it means to be a man and what it means to be a father. I see the choices many of you have made. They are empowering choices that I wish my dad had access to when he was young, so that he wouldn't have had to figure it out on his own. Given the place that you may have in our society, you may have more power to influence others when you make strong, healthy, loving choices about what it means for you to be a man. Many of you are doing that every day. And now is the time to be loud about it. to share what you've done, what you're doing. Talk with your kids, your friends, your family, with those who are afraid of how things have changed, about the man you are and the man you want to be and your journey to get there. And be honest about where you've fallen short and what you still hope for. Express your support for transgender people with other cisgender men. The more open you are, the more room you are making for those who are facing very harsh consequences for being truthful to the men they are. The people who are making harsh consequences, who are experiencing harsh consequences that expanded the idea of manhood that you have been able to have access to. We owe it to them. So my dad, he's cool again to me. You know, something happens in your 30s when you start realizing that all the things that were like super awful about your dad were actually like, oh, he kind of had something going after all. You know, he's a beautiful person who is grappling with some of the choices he made as a father. But I hope that he knows what a blessing his struggle was for us, even if he didn't get it right. He's a pretty amazing person. I'm very, very thankful for him. And I hope to all of you who are fathers that there are some folks out there who are extremely thankful to you for the journey you've been on and the blessings you have offered them. I want to close with a poem by Reverend Evan Carville Zemer, a Unitarian Universalist minister who identifies as genderqueer. It's called I Believe in Fathering. I believe in fathering. I believe in the radical idea that men have the full human capacity to nurture. Hair bows and baseballs, cooking and creativity, tools and tiaras, camping and dancing, snuggles and shrieks of delight. Too many fathers don't believe in their own fathering. Too many are scarred by their own fathers for hearing their hearts say otherwise. Too many have known fathers who, faced with a quivering lip and tears, could only say, man up. Too many have known fathers who knew only yelling and hitting. Too many have known fathers who lost sight of their sacred role of protector. But I believe in fathering. When a human being gestates and gives birth, their brain changes permanently. A father's brain changes permanently too, changes as he rocks his baby to sleep, delights in baby games, and soothes bumps and bruises. A father earns his new neurobiology. Where a father out with his kids is asked, are you babysitting? And where's mom? Where fathers are the punchline. I believe in fathering. I believe in the radical idea that men have the full human capacity to nurture. Whether their children come through birth, adoption, or fostering, through scouts, sports, Sunday school, or youth group. I've known too many gay dads, too many single fathers, too many men raising children others couldn't to believe otherwise. I believe we all, especially our children, deserve to know that the human capacity to nurture belongs to every one of us. I believe in fathering. Thank you. And happy Father's Day. Please rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn, number 1051, We Are.
There it is. Let's sing this twice. We've already done several hymns several times. Let's do this one twice, please. Does have the repeats, okay.
benediction this morning is 1 Corinthians 16. Keep alert, stand firm in your faith, be courageous, be strong, and let all you do be done in love. So we extinguish this chalice. The light of its flame now burns in our hearts until we are together again. Let us receive one last musical gift.
May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be whole. May you be filled with peace and kindness. May you be whole. May you be filled, with loving kindness. May we feel whole. May we feel filled with loving kindness. Sing along. May we be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be whole. Blessings. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today. Happy Father's Day to all of you who father. See you next week.